I asked you if that would be, the certification would be a tantamount to a seal of good housekeeping from that agency, and you said no. And that might even create confusion and pinpointing of responsibilities as to who will monitor that NGO. Kasi kung may magka-problema, sabihin, hindi, in-endorse nyo sa amin eh. Hindi, endorse lang naman yan. Ano ba namang endorse? Pirma lang yan eh. Di ba? So, it might create more problems rather than solutions.
Actually, we're, like for example, our relationship with the DSWT, we do have a MOA in existence. So, the division of work is really quite clear there. And we usually focus more on the submissions like audited financial statements, which we look for some discrepancies or misrepresentations, which we also correlate with their sworn statement of amounts, sources of funds, application of funds, together with the certificate of existence of plans, progress, activity. And in certain instances, like for example, the COA has come up with a report, we also compare all those figures in our submissions of these foundations with the report of the COA and see if there is also some either overstatement of expenditures or understatement of fundings received.
Okay. Yes, it's here. Your in your recommendations, setting a criteria for selection of NGOs that will be subjected to off-site examination, off-site or on-site examination.
So, Your Honors, actually made the form for all these schedules and sworn statements more precise. So now, if you're a foundation and you receive, for example, foreign funding, we require that you indicate the specific source of the foreign funding and also what kind of donor was the one that was the source of the funding. It's not only, I would say, related to whether or not the foundation receives government funds, because even private funds may have some strings attached or what. So we do require full disclosure on those matters.
Thank you. Senator Angara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Ang tanong ko po, Mr. Chairman, para kay sa hepe ng SEC is ano po yung universe ng NGOs which are registered with the SEC? How many are there?
As I said, two kinds of corporations, basically stock and non-stock non-profit corporations. So under non-stock non-profit corporations, we have all these kinds of associations, alumni associations, we have tricycle drivers associations, we have the condominium corporations, we have foundations, we have NGOs, and that would number about 250,000. Foundations, only about 20,000. So different classifications, and basically NGOs are required to submit a certain list of requirements upon application for incorporation. On the other hand, foundations would have two additional requirements, like we require foundations to have at least 1 million in capital stock, and they're also supposed to submit a statement that they're willing to be audited by the Commission.
Yes. So, napakarami ho, no? Yung 250,000. At saka, yung requirement ng 1 million for foundations. When was that? I think mga 10 years ago ho yun, ano? It was around 10 years ago. So, nakita natin na kumonte ang foundations at karamihan ay bumuo ng mga NGOs. So it's not really feasible, Mr. Chair, na ang SEC, I don't think does the SEC have the manpower to really physically inquire into these agencies or into these associations na binuo para tingnan kung bona fide sila or genuine. Parang hindi yun yata ang it's not within the competence of the, kasi alam ko sa korporasyon, sa monitoring pa lang ng general information sheet, sa mga compliance requirements, hirap ng SEC. So tama ho ba yun?
Your Honor, please, maybe we'll view it from this angle, that the SEC has two major laws which it implements, the Corporation Code, Securities Regulation Code. Of course, when it comes to publicly listed companies, we do examine them every year, each and every one. However, with respect to corporations right now registered with us, about 800,000, even assuming that only half of that's active, that would mean 400,000. And I said about 30% would every year constitute non-stock, non-profit organizations. So there will be two stages where you can monitor or examine these submissions in the pre-registration, and that's based again on disclosure. We also have to comply with our ease of doing business obligations so that we would rank high in the competitiveness report. So you
Alex,
cannot...
Senator Bam, pagka pinahirapan nyo.
Yes, and we cannot really at that point require documents, ask them to explain, because that will really prolong, and we are targeting one-day registration. So now, post-registration, of course, if there's a complaint, somebody writes us and says that corporation is fake or that corporation put in a fictitious name, then that's the time we investigate. We call them for a hearing, we call them for conference, we send out people to investigate. All the rest, we'll just have to do random. And we sort of want to attain a certain number per year of random checking. That goes even for stock corporations. As I said earlier, we only have, while we've created a new department that would look especially into these NGOs, foundations, non-stock, non-profit corporations, we have to calibrate our resources and try to apply them evenly, maybe adopt a risk-based scenario where we'll only be really looking after those troublesome ones.
Yes, the fact that you have to adopt a risk-based scenario is in a sense an admission that it's physically impossible to oversee all of these associations, di ba? Hindi ho ba?
Yes, Your Honor. In fact, there was an expert from UK who came over to do a study of non-stock, non-profit corporations here. Way back, I wasn't at SEC yet, but I saw him again later, and he was talking to me about that, and I said, no. When I came in, I even added to those requirements, and he said, no, you don't do that because you don't make it difficult for them to register, because, you know, it's the right of everyone, a constitutional right of everyone to associate, to form associations. So I said, but how will we be able to weed out the ones who incorporate just to do something fraudulent? And he said, you have to adopt a risk-based scenario. In any country in the world, that's what they have done, because they do not really want to eliminate these foundations who really do good by and large.
That's right. Oh. It's a fundamental right. Nabanggit na ho nga dati na there are some associations which are formed for legitimate purposes, at kawawa rin yung mga legitimate NGOs like Gawad Kalinga, who really who help the state in performing governmental functions. Pero parang pag sinabi mong NGO, ang reaction ng taong bayan ay parang masama na, negative na po yung connotation niya. So anyway, I'll leave this SEC alone, Mr. Chair. But I think to every agency, siguro yung standing question natin is, looking back, ano yung mga holes na pwede natin i-plug sana within the system? Siguro, Mr. Chair, let's look at the flow of the money, no? Mula nung ang sistema niyan, for example, either the legislator or the DBM will say where the money will go. So may request for funding. So that's one stage. Pangalawang stage, yung pagpadala ng request dun sa DBM. So that now second stage is the release of the money. And then the third stage is the implementing agency. So, and then the fourth stage is the audit. And then the fifth stage, which is not always present, is the special audit. So at what point could we have plugged the holes? And would it be administratively feasible or practicable to institute safeguard mechanisms which are not overbroad, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
I see Chairperson Herboso wants to say something. Go ahead.
Yes, just note, because you said something about the release of funds. Well, we do require, especially with those foundations accredited with the DSWT, that they should get a clearance or a certificate of good standing from us every time they would receive funding. Well, in the case of DSWD, I guess it would be also government or private funding. And once we get an application for a certificate of good standing or clearance, that's the time we're also able to monitor compliance. So that would be the third kind. One is random. Two is if there's a complaint. Three is if they happen to come back and say we need a certificate of good standing. That, I think, is a way also of being able to check on their compliance.
Who issues the certificate of good standing?
The SEC.
The SEC.
Yes.
And what is the basis for the issuance of
Only also monitoring compliance with our requirements. So we'd also look if they have filed the AFS. We will ask our Office of General Accountant to see if the AFS is in order.
AFS is a financial statement.
Yes.
What is the A?
Audited financial
Audited,
statements.
okay.
Then we see if they've submitted on a yearly basis all those schedules that are supposed to be attached to the financial statements, as well as the sworn statements of amounts and application of funds.
So,
Sources.
since you brought it up, looking back, pagka may system ganon in place, because I know you weren't the chair when these things happened. Eh. Let's say na-audit itong mga NGOs ni Napoles. And the problem is, wala naman yung pangalan ni Napoles sa papeles dun eh, di ba? Wala siyang pinirmahan na she certifies that all the papers are in order, etc. Wala rin yata yung pangalan nila Ben-Hur dun sa papeles. I think they used ang testimonies, or maybe in some, no? Pero yung testimony is parang damis talaga yung ginamit. But how would that system have worked if we try to abstract it?
We actually see that it doesn't work that well. Because they could submit
Parang
any kind
papeles.
of financial statements. They can even show that the disbursements tally the receipts. But in the case of those foundations that you mentioned, we noticed that there were only 2 auditors doing all the financial statements. And maybe that should have rang a bell. If we had that database previously, that we could have seen that there were only 2 auditors doing the financial statements. Another one is we should have seen at that point that there were only 2 banks or 1 bank issuing the certificates of deposit of the 1 million requirement for foundations.
Well, how many people would be doing the job of this certification, of the random checks? Is it a particular office within the SEC that would be doing it?
Whenever there's an application for the issuance of a certificate of clearance or good standing, actually all the departments would have to give their inputs on compliance. If, for example, they'll have to look at the Enforcement and Investor Protection Department whether there's a pending investigation. Then they'll have to ask the Corporation Registration Monitoring Department whether there's an application for some amendment or some other failure to file the GIS. No? So all the departments will work together, and it's eventually the Corporate Governance and Finance Department which issues the certification.
Yun nga, siguro, just like in the anti-money laundering bill, there are some transactions which raise red flags, so to speak. So siguro we have to look for those red flags, the equivalents of these red flags in when it comes to these corporations, interlocking directorates, maybe something like that. But that's not in itself. That's not punishable, no? Because that's a common corporate practice. But,
Although right now we're also putting up a database that would show us if, let us say, a group of persons, related persons, incorporate with such frequency in such a short period of time. Like, for example, 5 foundations today, and then they come back next week incorporating another 5
yes,
foundations.
that definitely would be
Although,
red
of course,
flag.
law offices do that. They
Yes, but
incorporate.
Madam Chair, also in this case, remember that Ben-Hur testified that they would wait 3 years before they actually use. So may foresight sila, actually. Hindi naman in-incorporate or finorm yung NGOs within a short period of time. So talagang, it's a well thought out scheme eh. If you look at it eh, talagang, and it seems that yung tatlong nabanggit nyo, yung random complaints, they're very good schemes, no? To ferret out itong possible fraud. Pero parang, ano pa rin, siguro, if we add up everything, the little things that all the agencies do, then maybe it will add up to some really very good safeguards, Mr. Chair.
But Madam, I guess it's really clear that we need technology, no? Because what's to stop them from disaggregating and the batches of the NGOs that they want to register? So one will be in Baguio, one will be in Camarines, Naga, one will be in Masbate, one will be in Dipolog City. Please.
Your Honor, we'll also have to connect with our 8 extension offices. We've already, since I came in, required the extension offices to be allotted the territories under their care, and they're supposed to monitor closely foundations, among others. Actually, when the computer system of SEC was set up, that was way back in 2005 or 2006, the parameters were still not as advanced as today. Like for example, if you want to put in a database, you'll have to encode manually each and every data in the application. While I think now you'll have the program where you can just scan, and the minute it's uploaded, then it can already provide as a database for checking whether, for example, if a certain person now is incorporating today, you can readily see how many has incorporated in the past. So maybe that would serve as a trigger at that point.
Senator Aquino?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, you raised the topic of technology already. No? I just wanted to follow up. Chairperson, kapag for example, meron pong red flag ang COA dun sa isang NGO, does that information get to the SEC, whether manually, meaning it's sent to you that please check these NGOs, or through technology where may flag na siya na doon sa database ho ninyo lumalabas na may mga issues tong mga specific grupong ito?
If you are pleased, for this particular matter, we did receive from COA the report beforehand. So we were able to plot out already, insofar as the financial statements filed by these foundations are concerned, whether they jive with the findings of the COA.
For this particular case, but in a regular case, where COA might find irregularities with particular organizations, meron na po bang proseso na may automatic flagging yon sa SEC? I don't think there is, no?
None yet, Your Honor, but we were talking about it, in fact, I think 2 months ago, that we will enter into MOA or some form of agreement. Yes. Because right now, the COA really sends people to us in order to data mine our database, and in order for them to be able to complete their investigations, and they really stay there week's end in order to complete their investigations. Same with the BIR.
That's very good news, no, chairpersons. That's very good news, no? Kasi kung tutusin po, kung hindi ho nag-uusap-usap yung mga ahensya, talagang makakalusot yung mga gustong makalusot sa atin. In fact, maybe not just COA and the SEC, but really the goal is to have all of our government agencies interconnected, such that if an implementing agency finds irregularities with one, it can be blacklisted across all of the different agencies, no? In fact, in the last hearing, when Janet Napoles was here, it was revealed that she was already investigated for the fertilizer fund scam in 2005 or 2006. That should have been a flag already, no? And so on and so forth with the rest of the other NGOs, no? So, baka rin ho kasi nahanapan sila sa isang agency, lumipat lang ng ibang agency, at doon naman na gumagawa ng masama. So, you know, the interconnectedness is very important, and I really laud Senator Gingona for having this hearing, because, you know, admittedly, it might not be as emotionally charged as our previous hearings, but ito yung tinatawag nating system changes, eh. The changes we need to do in the system to really be able to plug in the holes and to make sure na hindi nito mauulit-ulit. So that's probably one major aspect of probably of the committee report, Mr. Chairman, where we can really propose that government goes through of the process of interconnectedness and transparency. Kesa sa merong mga niche, may mga pockets in government that they can enter and really create havoc in. We would rather that it's all interconnected, no? And I'm sure with that interconnectedness, marami pong marireveal dyan. If you're connecting BIR, SEC, customs, implementing agencies, COA, then I think there will be a process of really cleansing the ranks, no? And cleansing all of these different organizations in government. No? So thank you for that good news, Chairperson Herbosa.
Just one point, Mr. Chair, arising from the chairman's and Senator Aquino's interjection regarding IT and information sharing. We go back also to not so long ago, yung legacy scams, and the one in, what's his name? Sa legacy. Celso de los Angeles, sorry. Celso de los Angeles. And Aman scam, more recent Aman scam. Kasi ang nangyari dun, parang napalusutan din yung mga regulatory agencies, eh. Ang sabi ng BSP, hindi naman banking yan, hindi naman bangko yan, hindi strictly banking yan. Sabi ng Insurance Commission, ay sa SEC yan, sa ano yan. Tapos sabi ng SEC, sa ganito yan. So that seems na may mga butas talaga yung regulatory framework natin. Which is why maybe yung ibang bansa, gusto nila, basta financial services, isa lang ang regulator. But sa atin, we've chosen a system na kada classification natin, meron tayong individual regulator, SEC sa mga korporasyon, Insurance Commission for insurance companies, the BSP for banks and financial institutions. So yun siguro, although medyo labas na yan sa scope ng ng PDAS scandal, it's still within our jurisdiction as legislators to see how the public can be protected against these sort of schemes. Mr. Chair.
Yes, in fact, I do remember Commissioner Biason was telling us one time that yung magagawa nga ng may mga gusto mag-volunteer tumulong sa anti-corruption sa customs, sabi niya, yung yung pag-check ng mga SEC papers na mga those that deal with customs, kailangan tignan ng mabuti. Nobody's looking at it now at that point. Yes, there's really a need, no? But it's not only the Securities and Exchange Commission that registers NGOs. We have the Cooperative Development Authority that's here for co-ops, Department of Labor and Employment for labor organizations, the Home Guarantee Corporation for Homeowners Association. Have I missed anything else? Mr. Pakpak, have I missed anything else? Pakapak, sorry.
No, sir. Generally, those are the widely accepted registering agencies.
So we have four. SEC, CDA, Department of Labor, and HGC for Homeowners Association.
Dole, and usually there are also a lot of NGOs registering with DSWD. A lot of traditional NGO operations fall under
DSWD? Okay. I wonder if they have juridical personality if you register with DSWD. Anyway, let's look into that. That's interesting to look at. Meron palang DSWD.
Actually, sir, a lot of line agencies have worked with NGOs, so they have different kinds of accrediting or having partnerships agreements with NGOs that they work with. So DA also has some kind of system. DAR has system of partnering with agrarian reform beneficiary organizations, people's organizations.
Oh yes, so
Mr. Chairman, may I
yes,
interject?
go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, no, I think what Mr. Pakapak is mentioning are partnerships. Because NGOs, and as you know, I've come from the NGO sector as well, marami ho talagang partnerships yan with different agencies. No? But to give it at a juridical personality or entity, it's still with the SEC. No? If they want to register as a non-stock non-profit. So, kapag sinabi po nating non-stock non-profit or NGO na pwede mag-transact, may resibo, may bank account, that's still with the SEC. No? Even if you partner with these agencies, I think they will still require that, especially if there's a transaction, that you register with the SEC. If I'm not mistaken, Chairperson Herbosa. No?
It's true, Your Honor.
There are some associations or groups which are informally put together that, may not necessarily need a personality yet, no? But they partner with different groups. That's also possible. But usually, if that particular entity really engages in transactions, they will still need to go to SEC to really register. And I think that's the common practice, no, if I'm not mistaken. But of course, in the course of doing their service, many of them will partner with different agencies. Even the National Youth Commission partners with youth organizations. So, if I'm not mistaken, practically all agencies in government would have partner NGOs at some point. But if they are bona fide and true NGOs in the sense that they do their service, they would at some point probably go to the SEC and register themselves.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Punta naman tayo sa cooperatives. Mr. Platero, narinig niyo po yung sinabi ng SEC, ang kakayahan po ninyo pareho sa SEC. Ilan pong registered cooperatives all over the country ngayon po?
Your Honor, we have 23,461.
23,000.
461.
Okay, so more or less halos pareho kayo ng SEC kung ganun. 22,000 thereabouts,